So, welcome to another episode of BetaTalk. I'd like to thank my sponsors, who are my guild patrons, and they are UK Radiators and Cast Rads. Great radiator companies. Check them out. I'll put links to their websites in the show notes. We've also got the Wolsey Group, Renewables Centres, a guild patron, and also my friend Dave, who produces Primary Pro, the outside pipe insulation system. And if you haven't signed up to the newsletter, please sign up to that. That's going to put the link in the show notes, and that's going to feature lots of case studies from engineers that are in the Guild of Master Heat Engineers. So today on the episode, got my friend Clayton Brown. If you're in the industry, you'll know exactly who Clayton is. We've got a bit of an exclusive for you because, Clayton, we're going to talk about a new initiative that this is going to go out today. So I don't know if you've publicly announced it yet or what's going on.
Hi Nathan. Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. Yeah, what we're talking about today is the launch of Express. So Express it's as similar as Zero Disrupt. So it's EDF Heat Pumps equivalent to a lower disruption install.
And
So
we've had
I'd like to talk
Adam
about it.
we've had Adam on the show to talk about Zero Disrupt, the Heat Geek Zero Disrupt. So this is similar. Now I know you quite well. You've been working on something. You've been working on this for a good few months, haven't you? And obviously then Adam announced his one, and you've been working on something. I mean, is it similar? Is it doing something different?
Yeah, well, Adam and myself have known each other for a while, and we both built our businesses up kind of next to each other in similar spaces. So, him launching Zero Disrupt, got nothing but respect for them and what they've done. He's just gone bold and brave and just moved into it and disrupted. And I used to do things like that when I was on my own. So now I have to behave a little differently. So yeah, I'm a little jealous of how he's ploughed through it and just delivered change. And that's what this industry needs. It needs more people to do that, to shake it up and do something differently. So you and I, that I'm sure we'll touch on in this episode, have had conversations that have stopped industry moving forward
Yeah.
by complication and mismessaging and disparity between CBs. So yeah, it's been something that I've been working on behind the scenes. And we've been doing this and working with the technology for a while. It's slightly different to Disrupt. They have different customers ultimately. I mean, Zero Disrupt is focused on the installer, giving the installer tools to be able to offer consumers more choice. Great, no problem. Ours is more focused on the consumer first and then the installer second. Not that we're saying that the installers are less value, because we definitely don't. We certainly respect the installers just as much as Adam, because without them, we would be in trouble. So it's just trying to offer customers choice, and that to me is most important, because right now, or certainly for the years that we've been in this industry, how many times has a heating installer gone into a property and said, you must change this, you must change that, you have to do this, you have to do that. And that has always caused me some problems, because I disagree with it and I always have done. So I've had many conversations and fallouts with MCS over the years. And this Express Disrupt is all the new phase of engineering and change, and it's that forcing change that we need in this industry to give consumers more choice, less cost, and just let's be sensible about it. Because before, I mean, I'll use this as an example. We all know, certainly the engineers that are listening to this call, is we would all know an engineer or engineers that would go into a house and say, well, unless you're going to do this and this, and the price is 20 grand, I'm not doing it. Well, who's that helping? Is it helping the installer? Is it helping the customer? Is it helping the industry? No. So we need to get to a place of normality and a place of BAU where customers can buy a heat pump in the same way that they buy a boiler, and just remove the complications. So That's what this is about, really. It's just making things simpler for a customer, simpler for an installer, still gives opportunity to earn good money for the installers, but brings that price down for a consumer, because that is the biggest hurdle that I'm sure we all agree.
Yeah, that without a doubt. So that's the choice, I suppose. Both Express and Zero Disrupt are giving consumers a choice of cost, I suppose, isn't it? That's the main choice.
Yeah, and it's, Adam, I listened to your episode with Adam, and Adam's obviously very passionate about this industry, as am I. And I think the only thing really that I heard a lot of was about efficiency. So efficiency is important. Yes, it is important. And also he said, customers don't care about flow temperatures. He's right. They don't. They don't care about flow temperatures. All they care about is how much it costs them every month. Now, how much does it cost them to replace a boiler for a heat pump? And how much does it cost them to run it every month? So I think the only thing to add to what Adam said was things like tariff,
Hmm.
because it doesn't matter how efficient a system is if you're on a rubbish tariff that's costing you a fortune, because you still have a customer that's upset at the end because it's costing them a fortune. It's not because of the kit or because of the efficiency. Purely because they're just paying too much for that electricity. So it is a factor of all of them. All of them together are a factor. But I'm really excited actually, because this just gives so many more consumers choice. And I don't care if a customer buys a heat pump from EDF, Octopus, British Gas, Heat Geek. For me, they're buying a heat pump. They're not buying a gas boiler. And to me, that's great. We've all got quite good competition. It's quite friendly between us all. We're quite professional with each other. There's no nastiness. We all want the right outcome. And that's what I enjoy about this industry.
Yeah, there is. You're right. What you say. There is some nice. So you kind of meet up with people like Greg and Adam Chapman quite frequently, don't you? And you're all quite pally, I suppose. It's nice because you're the sort of the big guns. British Gases, you guys, Aeras, Octopus, and yeah. Even though you're competitors, you all get on quite well, don't you?
We do.
And going back to sort of very interestingly, you said customers don't care about flow temperature. So I've just had an engineer this morning ring me up, and he's just done a zero disrupt round one of his customers. When I say he's just done it, so he's done the survey. So it's their system is you go around, do the survey. He's a great engineer, and it's he's using the zero disrupt software. I mean, I'm not versed with it. I don't know how it all works, but he does it. He's using the zero disrupt, hits the button, and it gave the customer sort of three options of what they could have done at three different costs. And the first thing the customer asked the engineers, "Oh, what are the flow temperatures for this?" Because these are customers
He's been watching Adam's videos.
who've been watching Adam's videos, and the engineer said, "I don't know because the software doesn't give him that data or information even." And he said the customers really wanted to know what the flow temperatures was because they've understood that that's a big component of efficiency. So that was very interesting. And I mean, another thing, I mean, like I say, it's all very new. I suppose the zero disrupt software is very new, and they'll iterate it to hone it and make it a bit better. But the engineer was saying it didn't pick up on the fact that there's going to be quite a long run underneath the outside decking for primary pipe work, which would be costly, and because it's obviously got to be insulated and stuff like that. And he thought the system wasn't picking up on that. But again, like I say, I've not used the software, don't know the software. So with your system, is it still the same where people do a survey? How do they do the survey? Have you got some? Because you guys use Carno, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the only thing to say to that is software won't solve everything. It's, if we see it as a solution to all of our problems, I think we'd all be kidding ourselves, really. We know how powerful it is, but we see it as a tool. It should be a tool to help us get there. And I'm sure that engineer will feed that back to Heat Geek, and I'm sure they'll tweak as they go along, because the truth is none of us have all the answers. We're just learning as we go. So, certainly with technology and software, it evolves day by day. You say regularly this industry moves quickly. My God, does it move quickly? Things change by day. So yeah, our software is Carno. So that's with Adam and Tim. So we've been working with Carno for probably a year now, probably a little bit more, and it's our BAU software anyway. So this isn't unique with Express. We use this for EDF Heat Pumps BAU normal. So we use this normally as our software throughout our day-to-day entities, which is how we've managed to reduce the time frame of an install considerably because of using technology in different ways. It is very important, and it's just how we use it. So I would say really the difference between it is we can still price a job without going to the house. So Adam said that, we're decades away from that. Well, we're physically doing that based on the thousands of installs that we've done over 20 odd years. We've done awful lot of installations that we can look back on and go, well, actually, we're confident in this price, and that's the price, and that's how we move forward. I think the only difference there is because HeatGeek, the installers, price the install themselves, that installer needs to go to the house. So I think that's the difference. So it's not that it can't be done, it's just that it's a different model. So that installer would be attending the house, and ours, it wouldn't. It would be, one of our internal teams that would quote that customer over the phone, and, very quickly. We can do that pretty quickly. If the customer wants to go ahead, then we would send one of our field designers out to site that would ultimately replace what that installer would do in the home. So they would use the Carno software in the house to actually do the survey in-house in real time, and that's where we've got the LiDAR, all of that floor planning software, and it's all done at the end of the survey, and it means that we know, is it even feasible? Can we actually fit the heat pump in the location that it is? So again, it's not new software to us as a business, it's not new to Express, but it's a powerful tool that we've been using for a while.
This word AI that we're all living amongst now, does it use AI? Because obviously, when Zero
Yeah.
announced,
Well, I'm a bit of a dinosaur when it comes to AI, so certainly the Heat Geeks will be further ahead of that than I am. We're slightly more behind that technical level in terms of the AI side. We're still using old-fashioned engineering based from the survey information that's provided. So we're not quite trusting at that point yet to allow, the customer or the system to work it out for us. But that doesn't mean that it won't happen. HeatGeek, I think, have probably been doing that for a while longer than we have. So, again, it's just how things evolve. Ultimately, our aim is to make sure that it works for the customer, they get good performance from it, and that it's simple and it's straightforward. We guarantee performance as well for customers. So that's also been in our system for probably a year now, a real performance guarantee. And if we don't meet that performance guarantee, we'll give the customer all their money back.
and how do you assess the performance, and what do you do with that?
So how we did this, and through years of experience with working to MCS standards, which are very rigid and complicated and not probably realistic to a customer. I mean, for instance, my own wife, if I had a heat pump in my own house, which I do, by the way, I'm just using this as an example, and we designed a system to MCS regs with 21-degree room temperatures, she would be complaining all the time because she likes the house 25 degrees. So what we've done is we've made sure that our performance guarantees are bespoke based on the design. So what we do is we involve the customer in the design at the beginning and say, well, what temperature do you want to achieve? We design the system to what their needs are, providing they exceed MCS regs, which they will. We design the system bespoke to what their needs are, and we'll guarantee whatever that is.
And so, are you monitoring it, or are you going from what the heat
Yeah,
pump?
so I mean, Express, we're going to monitor everything. So we haven't monitored because of the manufacturers that we've used previously, and we still use, but the actual technology within some of those systems, the monitoring isn't particularly where we would like it to be. So it's only really the third party side. I mean, the ideal heat pumps are pretty good when it comes to the monitoring side. They're probably slightly better. However, with Express, we're going to use Homely. So we're going to use Homely on every system, and we're going to make sure that all of these are measured and moving forward, especially because of the hot water situation and what we've spoken about, obviously behind the scenes with performance on hot water systems and using existing cylinders. We need to really make sure that it's not just talk and that we've actually got data to back it up. So moving forward, monitoring systems will certainly become more of the norm. However, if we have got a customer that we haven't monitored that calls us up on our performance guarantee, we would put monitoring equipment in.
So the Homely also does tariffs as well, or it also is monitoring the price of electricity every half hour, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it won't be long before we've got, I mean, EDF have our EDF heat pump tariff. We've now got free phase, which is basically the new agile um, equivalent to Octopus. So that's brand new. So that's really quite exciting. So we've got lots of things as EDF coming out and that are already existing that can give that customer the confidence that by running their system, it's going to be cheaper than a gas boiler. So when we're looking at trying to utilize people's existing systems, try to use more of the system, have less waste, design a system that works and provides the heating and hot water that they're asking for, guarantee it and monitor it and ensure that their costs are covered by making sure they're on the right tariff. I think that's a really good place to be. And I'm proud. I still enjoy my job. And this is why, because it means that we're actually making some change.
The Homely, I believe, I know it works with Ideal. You guys use Ideal because Ideal use the Medea unit and Homely work. Dakin, you guys use Dakin. I mean, does Homely work with Dakin now?
It does, as far as I'm aware, it does.
Yeah.
But the truth is I don't get too much into the detail anymore. It's more the tech teams that are less dinosaurs than myself that get involved in those things. So yeah, they more involved in how that works. That's your Jamies and your Neils, our teams that get more involved in the nitty gritty
So
and
the
just are too busy these days.
so Express and I suppose Zero Disrupt. It's all based around being able to install at the lowest cost possible for a consumer, but with still the efficiency. So, and obviously, as you and I have spoken about, this is designing a system to go into a home that hasn't got to disrupt much of the home. Not radiators everywhere, not pipe upgrades, and something you and I have talked about as well as this cylinder thing. So lots of people have. Well, there are still lots of cylinders out there. I know lots of people. When you and I from the generation when people start to switch over to combis, weren't we? And but there are still lots of cylinders out there, and as you know, some of the cylinders are quite capable of working with a heat pump system. And I introduced you, didn't I, to the CEO of Napit the other day on an email chain. There's quite a few people involved in that email chain. Even Greg Jackson, I think, is involved in it. And because we're trying to get to the bottom of, well, do cylinders have to be changed? If they do have to be changed, who said they had to be changed, etc., etc. And we sort of narrowed it down to, and for the listener, when people are MCS accredited, when an engineer or an SME is MCS accredited, they also have to belong to what's called a certification body. And there's, I think, about 9 or 10 certification bodies that are allowed to audit work on behalf of MCF. So you all pick different. So you are with Napit. I think Adam was with. I think ERA with IAA. There's APHC. There's Offtech. There's a few of them, isn't there? And of course, because there's a few of them, they were all. We noticed they're all doing different things. Their auditing is picking up on different things, isn't it? And cylinders being the one of them. So we finally got some resolution, didn't we, on that email chain, didn't we?
Yes, yeah, and it was my first industry win, so I'm quite proud of that. So thanks, Nathan, for the introduction. But it felt good that actually we got some clarity, and that clarity I'm sure will be shared to industry soon enough. But what it was I used to, I mean, probably 2, 3 years ago, we used to offer a Daikin high temp with an existing cylinder for exactly the same reasons that Express exists, Zero Disrupt exists for exactly those same reasons. And I got pulled by MCS by saying, "Oh no, 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 no! You can't do that. You can't unless it's got heat pump cylinder stamped on the side and it's a bespoke manufacturer approved heat pump cylinder, it's not possible. So I had to scale it back. So I was like, okay, well, if that's the rules, I disagree with it and I'm going to look into it, but we have to follow the rules. So ultimately, MCS stipulate the regs or the rules. They ultimately say this is what should be done, this is how it should be done, and then it's passed to the CBs to make sure that they're enforced and to make sure that the installation companies are doing what MCS want them to be doing. The difference was those CBs had a different interpretation of the rules.
Mm.
So they all had a different situation, different interpretation, and that is not okay. That's not okay for every MCS heat pump installation business in the country, because we're all trying to do the best for the customer, but all under different interpretations of the same rule.
Mm.
And that's not okay. So yeah, so we got confirmation from NAPIT, and that basically MCS have agreed that that should be the case. NAPIT are updating their systems to make sure that the technical bulletins are shared out amongst others, that this is possible and how and why that can be managed. So again, there will be more people doing this moving forward. I'm pretty sure of it. But, thanks to Adam ploughing through first, and, we've come along second, but it gives that clarity to industry. This is actually possible. This can happen, and we can reduce costs for consumers, which is what we're all trying to do, really.
Is it launching or have you started it? Have you started?
No, we're launching Express now. So ultimately, this is now. But I also wanted to give Adam a bit of time. I didn't. There's enough work for all of us in this industry. There's more than enough work for us all, and we all play nicely to a degree. So yeah, it didn't feel right to come out right at that time when Adam launched it. So this is just us coming in after and just saying, well, look, we're also going to do this as well, because we think it's right for customers, and also it's right for the installers. It gives the installers more choice. We've just launched probably 3 months ago HPIN Direct. So our HPIN Direct umbrella ultimately allows any installer to fit a heat pump under our umbrella, and there's no cost associated with that. And we guarantee customers performance. We guarantee everybody gets the right outcome. The installers get to price their own work. And with Disrupt, that's what that model is, which is great, and fully support it. And with HPIN, we're going to do the same with Direct, is that Express can be used through there. So installers that are out quoting jobs, they can also use Express for their own jobs to price their own jobs. So this only allows more installers access to more jobs or more customers that can't afford a heat pump at 7, 8, 9, 10,000 pounds, but could afford a heat pump at 2, 3, 4, 500 pounds. I mean, our first HPIN Direct order was 250 quid.
When you said 2, 3, 4, 500, is that hundreds or thousands?
Sorry, Nathan, what was that?
You said 200, 300, was it, or did you mean 2,000? A price of 2,000. Yeah.
Yeah, price of 2,000. So it's similar now to a gas boiler. That's ultimately what we're seeing our templates, our tests being done on, because this is a new launch. We want to make sure that we're not giving customers any false prices, but it is very, very similar to a gas boiler now, which is what we wanted. That's what we've all been aiming to do, but we couldn't do it before because we had to sell a customer a £3,000 cylinder.
Yeah.
And all the extra associated work with that, and all of the extra rad changes. So yeah, this is a good thing for everybody.
I mean, I do know there'll be engineers that. So I mean, I remember sitting in a very sort of high up meeting, and Octopus was sitting next to me, and obviously, kind of, they were the first people to say, this cost parity, they're going to get it down to.
Yeah.
But yes, they are going to go in the same price as boilers, but like some engineers point out, yeah, but it's taxpayers' money that's funding it.
Of course.
So
Need to be respectful of that.
Yeah, so that's now going back to you said about your umbrella. Now you're a free umbrella, aren't you? So other umbrellas, I mean, I think Adam's umbrella works on the premise that the engineers on it have to pay a certain amount per month. You guys do everything free, don't you? I think,
Completely free,
and that's everything. Their training,
all free,
membership to the scheme.
all free. And we've done this. So it's not free. It is a cost, but it's a cost to us rather than a cost to the installer. And we've got hundreds and hundreds of installers around the country now. We did have thousands, but because we needed to make sure that quality was top of the tree, we won't take anybody on in HPIN. There is standards. We definitely had some installers that we shouldn't have had. So we've removed installers that weren't looking after the customer or perhaps the performance or the quality that we would like. So we've definitely gone down in numbers, but I'm still pretty confident we are still the largest network of installers in the country. But we need to support them. I know that you're big on training, and so are we. We've trained thousands of installers around the country, but they need more support around them. And if they can't afford £300 a month, to pay a subscription model, then what is there for them? Now, I know there's obviously arguments with that and saying, well, it isn't a cost, it's an investment because they get X, Y, Z, which fine. But again, that's a model for them. And I'm sure that they have many installers that are looking for that kind of solution. But there's also tens of thousands of installers out there fitting gas boilers that feel that the heat pump world is so far distant away from them. And that is what I've created with HPIN and HPIN Direct, is to say, well, look, guys, don't panic. Don't worry about that. We'll help you. We'll help you overcome those challenges. And, we're working closely with manufacturers, and, it's working really well. It's really working well that, we guarantee the outcome. It's literally a super safe bubble for a consumer, an installer, and a manufacturer.
You said about how you've got rid of some engineers from thousands to hundreds. Do you think that's still a problem, Clayton, in this industry? Do you think there are companies out there, sole traders out there, think, oh, there's a new thing that we can get involved in. That means we make more money. Let's just go and sling stuff in. Is that still a problem?
I think it is. And, I've seen the training data recently, and our own training, we're seeing less people want to get involved in training. That's just a fact. That's our own personal experience in the BPEC, the logic courses. We're just seeing less demand for those courses. We saw an uptake when all the funding was out, but then all of a sudden, even if you're offering it for free, you're getting installers not turning up because it's costing them money to turn up.
Yeah.
And we've seen less demand. So I think we've gone through that kind of early adopter stage within the existing heating installers, and we've now got these avid boiler lovers that hate heat pumps. That's the new focus for me anyway, because that's where the volume is, and we need to really support those engineers and say, look, it's really not that scary, guys, because this is how we can help you, this is how we can support you. So that's where we're aiming next, is how we can support that gas installer being in a house. For example, if one of our HPIN members is in a house and the boiler goes wrong, they can use our Carno app in the house, scan the house, and price the customer there and then in the house.
For a heat pump?
In the house. And we can have that system delivered to them within 48 hours.
Mm.
There's nobody else that can do that.
Mm.
So we are so close to the boiler replacement market. Yes, we have some complications with D&O. We have probably 35% of those that would take weeks to come back, but it is starting to improve. Some of the D&Os are worse than the others. Certainly the northern side seems more difficult than the others, which is a shame, but it's certainly things that we're seeing. And also bus. It takes a week, 2 weeks to actually go through the bus application. Yes, it can be retrospectively applied for, which I actually just learned, to be honest, which is great. But who takes the risk? Who takes the risk on taking that money or doing the installation without the customer saying, yes, you're okay for this bus grant? So it can physically be done quicker now, but the two hurdles are D&O and the bus application. So it's as fast as it possibly can be now. And we're delivering these jobs every day. But we need to share with the gas boiler guys, look, this is here for you. Because we're also seeing those customers saying, I want a heat pump. And that boiler installer, which we all know, says, oh, don't buy a heat pump. They're rubbish. They don't work. So we know that that boiler installer is losing business. They're actually losing business because they're turning customers down. And then they come to us. And then we ask the same installer or a fellow installer to go and install it. So it's a bit of a mixed bag at the moment. But for us, as much as we have choice for a consumer, we need choices for the installers. And that's why ours is free. And all the prices are online on our HPIN direct website. So all the prices are there. It's all pack prices like they used to with boilers. So that's the price. It includes all the MCS, it includes everything, no fees, and they just add that price to it.
You might see me switch my mute on every now and then because my brother's budgie's just decided to chirp up. I don't know if it comes across on the record. So the engineers, like you say, these gas engineers that are out there, and like you say, that there's a lot of them that they've heard heat pumps, they know there's a buzz around heat pumps within the industry, but they're completely switched off. We understand why they're switched off. They've got their families, they're running their businesses. It's hard to run businesses when you're sole trade or whatever. So they're just sticking to boilers, aren't they? They're sticking to what they know. I mean, what sort of ideas do you think you've got that helps them transition or to think about it? I know you've got the system in place for them to be able to do it a bit seamlessly and easy, but you still need to sort of switch their brains on and make them think a little bit.
100% right. Fully agree with you there. And to be honest, that's where we're working closely with Ideal as well. They've got tens of thousands of installers, and they want to encourage their installers as well to say, look, this isn't that bad. They've got great training, great support. They've done really well at hitting the ground, launching their heat pumps into the UK. And all of those installers, well, not all of them, but certainly a lot of them, just dislike heat pumps. They feel that it's coming away to steal their business. And we need to change that. We really do need to change that. And I think the landscape before was quite daunting for them. Going to gain MCS, going through all of that, all the cost and the time. They're not going to do that. And we know that, which is why there's such a lack of MCS registered heat pump companies in the business. You check that out compared with PV. The difference is considerable. People don't want to be MCS registered for heat pumps. So that's where the umbrellas will win ultimately, because it just removes the hassle and the stress and the cost. So again, they can just use ours and it's free. We're seeing installers, HPIN installers that are MCS registered themselves, cancel their own MCS and just buy them through us.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I've heard that, I mean, people are actually leaving MCS. I mean, have you heard that?
Yeah, well, out of our network, we've certainly got over 20, and I say 20 because I think from last look, there was 1,600 MCS registered heat pump businesses. There's not a lot. And when I say 20, that doesn't sound very much, but when you think there's only 1,600 in the country, it is quite a margin. So yeah, I would love to see how many are actually joining or leaving, but it's certainly a metric I think we should watch, because I don't think there's going to be lots of new people joining MCS. Sorry, MCS, but I think that's the fact.
Have you got any views on you and I close to the industry? There were other entities wanted to come into the market to compete with MCS. So Flexi Orb or Flexi Org, I can always forget. Trustmark, I think we're even trying to do this. Have you got any opinions on that? I mean, because some people are moaning that MCS have got like a monopoly on it. I sometimes find myself defending MCS because obviously they get blamed for quality. I say, well, there's a couple of industries in front of them that you should be blaming, like the certification industry, the one that's just handing out these certificates here, there, and everywhere, and the training industry. Because MCS can only accredit a qualified company. So if there's poor quality work going on, well, who's giving them a certificate to say they're competent? So I mean, have you got any views on this sort of recent sort of discourse that MCS are the sole?
Yeah. I think I agree with you that MCS have had a bit of a rough ride recently. They do seem to get a lot of the blame for lots of things which aren't necessarily associated with them. I mean, they're good guys generally. You know, we work well closely with Ian and Dan especially. They've been quite supportive, if I'm honest, as well with myself and how we've launched this out because I wanted to make sure that they were happy with what we were doing. So I think that they're trying to do the right thing, if I'm honest. I think the changes that we're seeing end of this year, if it does happen this year with MCS 2025, I think the outcome of those changes we're yet to see. But let's hope and see what changes that makes to the industry with that kind of sole ownership. That bit more MCS have always been kind of in the background, not really able to do a great deal because of the CBs, because of the way that it was structured. And I think as they're bringing things more in, I mean, we're seeing many jobs where MCS are calling every customer. Now that never happened before. So that's good.
Mm.
You know, if there's that level of scrutiny to make sure that customers are happy and getting what they need to, you know, MCS are becoming more on the ball all the time.
Mm.
And that's from a large installer in the country. So we're certainly seeing more MCS involvement in making sure, checking up, and that's what it should be. It should be that level, but I think they're doing okay. I wouldn't necessarily say or give them any hard times at this stage. I think they're doing their best to try and turn things around.
They've definitely got some good. They've got definitely got some very helpful people in MCS who go to great length to help people that I've introduced them to, or there are some very helpful. I mean, well, I've been told that one of the reasons why they've just been given this sole thing of they're the scheme administrators, whatever you want to call them, is because of what happened with Trustmark. Because Trustmark apparently were trying to get involved in this as well. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm a huge critic of Trustmark. I don't think they've done anything valuable for the industry at all. And in fact, with all this insulation news we're hearing, with all this rubbish insulation, all done with Trustmark people. I mean, I've had some people say to me it's actually criminal what Trustmark have been doing. I mean, I'm not going to say that myself on the podcast because I don't want to get sued. But that no one seems to be doing anything about it and saying, right, Trustmark, you need to come. They have had some conversations with Trustmark, obviously, but no, I think MCS get a bit of a that they don't get everything right, and they're changing, and maybe there's an argument that they've changed too slow. But this idea that if you have a competition within their little niche, it's going to make things better. I don't see that because you've still got the same problems. We've got the same problems with lots of CBs. Now, that's a competitive market because I think there's 10 CBs now involved with heat pump installations. And as you and I have managed to finally get a resolution via this email I sort of started about, what are all these guys and girls out there supposed to do with cylinders? Because you're all saying different things, UCB.
Different things.
And and I have said to Flexi, and that they're hopefully coming on the show. What are you going to do different to MCS? How are you going to control this whole auditing thing going on with? I mean, there's a lot of, I had to say to Era the other day, Era were chatting to me and say, well, RCB thinks that Tundish is mandatory. I said, nothing's mandatory. It helps you meet the requirement in the regulations. Lots and lots of people use them because of that reason. It helps you, but it's not a mandatory item. You can meet the requirement in a DUF. And they no. Our CB says it's mandatory. Well, right there, we've got a problem because if CBs don't know how to interpret the building regulations properly, we've got problems. And because some of them are quite new to this industry, you and I both know very, very well. You've got good engineers getting audited by their CB who haven't got a Scooby-Doo about heat pumps. They might have come from the electrician's world. Great trade. They might know.
Auditing.
Yeah,
Or auditing, also seeing that they're more compliance based rather than physically technical based, and it's just tick box. So how do and that's where the cylinder was. It was in there. Is it a heat pump cylinder? Yes or no? Tick yes or no. It's a much bigger question than that, and that's where I think it's a great thing we've managed to clarify that. But what else in that audit is the same?
What's the sort of workings of it? When you do your Carno software, is it giving you options? Is it said, right, if you want a really, really top-notch bespoke system, this is what you can do. If you want to have less disruption with hardly any rad changes, is it given choice? So I mean, how does the system know whether, what can be the cheapest option for the customer?
I think that in answer to that, I think most of it will be a conversation with a customer. You mentioned earlier that Octopus brought up the whole first kind of OPEX CAPEX conversation is, well, if the system is cheaper to buy in the first place, but it costs you a little bit more to run, would you prefer that than a system that costs you an awful lot to having lower running costs? So that conversation happened, I don't know, probably a year ago, probably longer than that now, the time going so fast. So what Carno allows that to happen is, look, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we're in your house. We've scanned your house. Your heat loss is this, and the system that has been sold to you is that, and it's that price because the system's already been sold by this stage. So we can then say to the customer, and the customer says, oh, it's just a bit too, it's a bit too much. What other options have I got? We can have a look. Okay, let's slide our flow temperature from 40 to 45 and see what difference it makes. So by just sliding the scale, we'll change the survey. It will change the outcome. So instead of it being 8 radiators, it's 2 radiators. If you want a cheaper system and you want it at 50 degrees, there's 1 radiator instead of 2 radiators. So it gives that customer the choice there and then. And that's where I think it's important because every house will be different. So until we get to the place where we're all at a fixed price, which I think is dangerous and slightly difficult, I know that we price a customer up front and we stand by that, but that's just an element of risk. So we just win some and lose some. And that's where we're okay as a business to accept that. But having a conversation with a customer in the house is really great. It's really powerful because it means that we can just have that choice and go over those scenarios with the customer.
Another conversation that you'd be good to ask, because like I say, you've got your ear to the ground better than most people. Is there a slowdown, do you think, in retrofit? Because I suppose lots of people were getting heat pumps. Well, I say lots, it's relative. Are we seeing a bit of a peak or a slowdown? Or...
Not wanting to bring up this conversation because I know that it's a bugbear to you, but even at the Heat Pump Summit, where there was some of the industry big shots there, we're all together in a room, and we had that conversation. How do we find the market? How are you finding it? And we all basically discussed the same thing, that it just felt a bit flat. It wasn't declining. It wasn't rapidly inclining. It was just a bit flat. So I don't think that we're in any particular trouble. I don't think we're seeing anything that we should read into, particularly overread into, but I think that it's still quite a slow burn. It's still quite an expensive thing for a customer. And that's where these things like Express and Disrupt are there to give customers choice. And if we can access a new range of customer, then all of a sudden we're not just flat anymore because we're aiming at customers that can afford, 5, 6, 7,000, 8,000 pound plus. We're now talking to the customers that can afford the 2, 3, 4, 5,000 pound boiler swaps instead. So then it opens up the market. And considering another thing you said, most companies are losing money in this heat pump space because it is just very difficult. Certainly the volume installers, most of them are losing money. So it's also about survival. How can the businesses survive? How can they evolve to cover their own costs, give customers more choice, when everybody else is actually investing heavily and selling at a loss? So it's definitely an industry that people don't want to get into, because unless you want to lose an awful lot of money, and I get told off for using the word lose because they say it's not loss, it's investment, Clayton. Well, that's on perspective, I think. So, some of them will make money in different ways later, perhaps with, if they've sold on finance or if they're, selling energy. There's multiple ways, but there's not so much money to be made in energy. So, everybody's saying how tight it is, how difficult it is, because nobody wants to increase the cost for consumers because our electricity is just too high anyway. Certainly globally, it's not a good place to be. So we're all working on trying to lower cost to a consumer. So having things like this means that we can hopefully survive, means that we can have businesses that are stable, that are solvent, and we can hopefully provide customers with more choice.
Now, you guys specifically retrofit. You aren't involved in new build at all, are you?
We do new builds, and actually Express really works well with new builds because it pains me to still see all these building sites going up with gas boilers in now. It's almost criminal, and it bugs us all. I know, but those jobs where I've got a heat only boiler and a cylinder that want a heat pump in a highly insulated home is super simple. It's a super simple install.
So
So that's
you're retrofitting a new build. Though. This isn't right at the.
yeah, and this is just not it's not right because it should have been a heat pump in the first place. But properties that I would say 10 years old, any of the properties that are 10 years old, it is super easy to fit a heat pump in there. Very little disruption because everything's new. The insulation is to a good standard. If they've got a tank, it will be modern anyway. It will be one of the modern unvented cylinders, very likely anyway. So those jobs are super simple and much lower cost. So from new builds to retrofitting in new builds, there is still a market for all of them, really. I mean, I know we're waiting for the future home standards for new builds to really take off, but because new builds don't require MCS, it's an area that MCS businesses aren't really involved in because they just don't buy a boiler, they buy a heat pump. But then we see the fallout after. Customers moving into houses that don't know how to use it, that don't know if it works. Is it installed correctly? Nobody knows because nobody's checked it. There is no standards of what that install should have been. There was no design standards. Was there a design? So the whole thing needs more input. And personally, I think that MCS, should be involved in the new builds to raise the standards there. But I think they'll have lots of challenge with that, I think. But let's see. Let's see if the future home standard does come out. I know we've got the warm homes plan coming in the next few weeks. So let's see if there's anything in there. I think we've been told to expect to be disappointed, I think is the tone. But isn't that generally? So when do we ever get good news? So let's see.
Do developers get? Do you have developers get in contact with you?
Well, I had one of the big ones. I won't name them, but I had one of the big ones contact me probably 2 years ago and said, right, we instigated the conversation because we said to them, look, this is coming. We want to help you as EDF. We want to help support you in this transition. And it was a C-suite individual, so it was a high top level exec. And I said, well, what's your plans for transition? Oh, well, we're just going to not buy gas boilers anymore and buy heat pumps instead. That's it. Nothing different apart from they just stop buying one and they buy the other. No factor into anything else. And that to me, I'll never forget that because that is exactly why we're in the situation we're in now when we're seeing, heat pumps in new builds which aren't potentially installed well or correctly, or do they work, do they not work? So that is exactly the reason why, because they didn't need MCS to deliver that. So that I think is missing. But I'm looking forward to hopefully having some more new build work. We get a lot of self builds because of bus. So we get a lot of self build. So yes, they would have had 0% anyway because they're a new build, but to be able to access the grant as well means that they get a system for virtually nothing. So there's definitely a market there.
I mean, and so the new build is interesting because obviously developers struggle to quality control whatever's going to be done. It's all subcontracted out, rah rah rah. Whereas you guys would be able to do that quality control piece. I mean, because you've got the advantage of you're a big company, you're associated. Well, you are EDF now, and also the one of the main heat pumps you use are Ideal. As we all know, Ideal are very big in that new build market. I mean, they beat Worcester Bosch a few years back, top spot of boiler sales because they dominated that new build market. So you've got you use Ideal, you've got great connections with Ideal. They've got great connections with developers. I mean, if I was a large developer, because rather than going to a large installation outfit, plumbing and heating, and saying, right, we've got a new build going up, 100 units, 100 houses, you sort all that, the heat pumps. Their quality control is still very hard to implement, whereas an established company like yourself that's nationwide would be able to do that quite easily for them, I would have thought.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that we're aiming on because, not only was my business as CB Heating that was acquired by EDF, there was also Contact Solar, which is the solar business within EDF now, but also PodPoint. So what you're saying about Ideal and new builds, yes, they were at the top spot and they are still at the top spot for relationship with new builds, but so are PodPoint for their EVs. So as EDF, we're already in these same conversations, in the same spaces with new build developers already. And we already have the businesses that can deliver all of that quality control at the same time. So we're just in those phases of how can we work together as all three businesses or within EDF to make sure that we can give developers and customers the best possible outcome. But we've got all the ingredients now, and it's working well. And certainly with Ideal and Dakin as well, because they're also established in the market. But we can only do this working with others. No one entity can do this themselves, and I think we're all in agreement with that industry wide, really. But we've certainly seen that things like HPIN has been incredible. People thought I was insane when I launched that, but it's the sole reason why we're not losing tens and hundreds of millions compared with the others.
I remember,
So
I remember when you did launch it, Clayton. I remember seeing that leaflet through my door from the on the left. Funny enough, I've around my brother's house and I've just noticed there's a leaflet through the door. It says "Dear Neighbour," and it's an Eco 4, and it's well, I'm in Norfolk. It's nowhere. This company's not in Norfolk. It's nowhere near Norfolk. So why they put "Dear Neighbour"? And I'm going to ring them up later and just give them a chat, see what they'd. Because that's. I mean, do you keep? Have you got views on what's going on? I mean, you guys don't get involved in Eco 4, do you? But have you got?
we do.
Oh, you do.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. So, certainly on the Eco 4, EDF are one of the largest funders of
Yeah.
Eco 4. And, we're also doing our own within that. We're doing a considerable number of Eco 4 installs ourselves as EDF heat pumps. And they're the ones that we stand by the quality because Eco, we do and have seen, we've all seen, bad installations, customers not getting what they need. You spoke about the insulation earlier, those kind of situations we all want to avoid. So we're quite proud on our Eco installs because we stand by every single one of them in the same way that we'll stand by our retrofit customer that spent £8,000 on it. So we will still make sure, and we guarantee that no customer will ever get left. If there's a problem, nobody's ever seen us on the front of the Daily Mail with a customer that's yes, we don't get it right, and we will always put it right, but we will never leave a customer with a system that either doesn't work or out of pocket. It just won't ever happen.
I suppose you can get the quality control right with Eco, whereas a lot of these companies are they are literally just boshing them in
Well,
left, right.
some of them actually turned us down. I probably shouldn't say this, but when we started doing eco work, we said, "Yep, that's the price, and that's how long it's going to take to do it." And they said, "Well, that's no good. We need it half the price, and we need it in twice as fast. Our installers do 2 a day." Like, well, I'm telling you now, that's not going to happen. So we actually lost an awful lot of business because we wouldn't do it. But the partners that we do work with that do care about a customer and want the right outcome have stayed with us. And yeah, we're doing hundreds of installs around the country on a monthly basis within Eco, and we can be proud of it. And we've got good customers that are, or customer feedback is high because we work with people that do actually care. But the ones that, don't give a hoot and are not the ones we want to work with, and they're certainly not the ones EDF want to work with either. They want the quality, high standards as well.
You mentioned EDF's tariff. Is that out and about now?
Yeah, yeah. So free phase it is. So it's not three, it's free. So free phase, and yeah, it's in. competition really with Agile. It allows different time frames through the day, but it looks really good. It's just been launched, and I think that will get us through till next year when we launch our demand side response tariffs. So that's when we'll be turning customers' heating systems on when energy is cheap, heating their hot water tanks when it's free. All the things like this we'll be doing very, very soon. So our customers obviously have the benefit of that from an energy company as well. So we can provide wider value
So
and hopefully try and save people some money.
I've just moved into a new rented property. I picked up the keys on Saturday, so I've got to get an electrical gas provider. I might tap you up for a good
Yeah,
EDF.
yeah, by all means. I can always point you or get someone that knows more about it than me to talk to you. But there's lots of opportunity on the market. I just had a look myself. I just had a little play around myself with my own heat pumps of how can I preload my heating and all of this and use tariffs sensibly. And is amazing what you can do, in terms of how much your energy costs you just by playing with the tariff and using your systems differently to how we've always done it before.
Well, I know my landlord very, very well, so if I can convince him and say about your express, we might be able to get a heat pump installed. It's a two
Yeah,
up, little two up,
that
two
would be good, wouldn't it?
cottage. Yeah, it would be. Um, I'll have a chat with him.
I'll do it for you for free. There you go, Nathan. So I'll give it to you at cost price.
He'll like that. My landlord would like that. He's my best. He was my best man at my wedding. Um,
We better get your install right, Nathan. Can you imagine?
well, I'm all right. I know plenty of people who can put it right. I mean, I tied with the idea of saying, well, why don't we just? I'll just put an air-to-air system in for you. But yeah, I kind of like the. I think he'd like. So he's an interesting character. So he's got the money for any heat pump system. He's got money to buy a bespoke one. That's more expensive. Which we've now realised not all customers can do that. They want cheaper options. But I have conversations with him about why. I mean, he obviously knows me really well. Why aren't you putting them in your own home, etc., etc. And it's really interesting how many different viewpoints there are from different customers. Why they've heard of heat pumps. He's definitely heard of them. There's still this reluctance, though, isn't there, out there with people wanting heat pumps, and it's understandable. They're scared. There's different fears for whatever reason. They just want to. They've got lots of things in life that they're thinking of. They're not thinking about their heat systems. They just want to be warm. Because as well as attracting gas engineers like what we've just spoke about, we've still got to attract customers as well, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah, and I think certainly as I've evolved into the world of EDF, and we're seeing, now seeing thousands of customers over handfuls of customers. A lot of the customers we have either already had PV previously, they have an electric car. These customers, these consumers out here, if they have one of them, if they at least have one of them, they will buy another. So if they have an EV, they'll buy PV. If they have PV, they'll buy a battery. All of these things are connected and they're the same customers. So you've got customers out there, a boiler replacement customer that has none of it. You have that market. You have some that have a little bit of buy-in in terms of renewable scope. So they believe in it a little bit more. You're seeing more people buy EVs now than petrol cars because they now see them on the road and they now believe in them a little bit more. And I think certainly with heat pumps is the difference is you can't flex a gas boiler install. You can't play with the tariff because it's one fixed tariff per unit that you use.
Mm.
And to tell a customer, look, this is different. Rather than that price at any time of the day, it doesn't matter when you turn it on, your bill is the bill and you get charged the more you use it. With a heat pump, it's completely different. You can heat in much cheaper times, but you just don't think that you need it in them times. So you just remove it from your mind. So a whole thing is mindset change. And by doing that, they can save money. And that's how the educational piece is, but it's tricky.
Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. I think this is an exclusive. I'm going to get this out today.
Yeah.
And I think it will be the exclusive. Well, I wish you all the best with it. And any other new ventures, ideas you've got coming up?
Oh my God, there's so much going on that it's exhausting, but this industry is exciting, and I do genuinely care about it, and we do want to do the right thing and the best thing, and we've got some really really tricky times ahead, politically. I know it sounds a bit boring, but that 2 3 years ahead, doesn't look great. So in terms of that, what confidence does that have for our industry? What we've got all of that to deal with as well, that consumers and installers are looking at that going, oh well, if the Conservatives and Reform are going to can it, what does that mean for me? Is that going to help us actually improve their confidence, or is it actually going to cause us a problem? So we've definitely got some challenging times ahead.
Well, I mean, that's optimistic and pessimistic at the same time, is it? I mean, it's definitely you and I have grown up in this industry. It's a very exciting industry. People are passionate within it. You are, I am. The big worry I have, just being a small independent sort of company, is I'm very passionate about it. And of course, now that we live in this world of social media where it's very, very easy to connect with people and to have conversations with people, I do have to sometimes sit back and think, crikey, I'm upsetting too many people because, the passion comes out as right, it's because you and I grew up before social media. Social media's been around, 20 years, but that's still new. You and I, everyone grew up talking to people. The only way, unless we were writing letters, and we weren't all writing letters to people, because it's so easy now to speak words, to communicate with people. And of course, you're not face to face. And I know for a fact I upset people because I can be a bit sarcastic. I wish I wasn't. And so I'm trying to navigate how I communicate to people. I am very super passionate, and unfortunately, I upset someone the other day, and they're a fantastic person, fantastic. They've helped me so much, but I upset them because I let my sort of frustration and passion, and I wish I was better at being able to communicate properly, so I don't upset people. But that's my own personal thing I'm trying to navigate, because as you know, no one was talking about the heat industry, were they, Clay? When we were first involved, no one.
No,
And now we've got
absolutely.
the whole world talking about it. We're talking about thousands of people now talking about it on social media platform. A lot of people talking about it that have never put heating systems in. They've got every right to talk about it. They're either passionate homeowners.
Everyone's an expert.
Yeah, and do you know what? There are. I mean, I used to knock some of the homeowners years ago. What are you talking about our industry for? But some of these homeowners now are cleverer than most engineers. They've really dipped into the site. Mick Wall, who writes them lovely blog posts. John Eubank, a very clever sort of a computery geeky type guy who I know. There's a lot
There's
of
some great individuals. There
there
really is
is.
some great individuals.
It's amazing, isn't it? And there's a good thing that goes on. I know Adam, your Adam, who works at Kano, they go to that thing that's the day before installer show. I can't think what it's called. I've never managed to get to one yet, but that's always
Me either.
that's
Me either.
always
But I
good.
know what one you mean.
Hear good things about that. Lots of people, really passionate people, chatting about it. So the passion's there. Yeah, we are going to see a lot more bumps. I think some peaks and troughs.
Yeah.
But yeah, well done, Clayton, for what you're doing. Thank you ever so much for giving me this exclusive, and I wish you all the best, buddy.
Nice talking to you.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.